Once upon a time, in a quiet village that lay nestled between the hills and the dark edge of a sprawling forest, there lived a little girl who was so sweet and gentle that all who knew her loved her dearly. She was the only child of her parents, a mother and father who worked hard to keep their small cottage warm and cheerful. Though they had little in the way of riches, their home was full of kindness, and their daughter was raised to be both obedient and merry. The child's grandmother, who lived several miles away in a small house at the far side of the woods, doted on her even more. This grandmother was skilled with her needle and thread, and one winter she stitched for the child a warm cloak made of crimson wool. The cloak had a great hood, which the little girl would pull up over her shining hair whenever the wind grew chill. The garment suited her so well, and she took such delight in wearing it, that before long everyone in the village called her by no other name than Little Red Riding Hood. Now one morning, as the bells of the village church chimed softly in the distance, and the smoke of chimneys curled lazily into the air, her mother, who had been busy at the churn and at the oven, called her daughter indoors. Upon the kitchen table sat a small cake, golden brown from the fire, and beside it a pot filled with fresh butter. The mother, wiping her hands on her apron, turned to the girl and said, "My dear child, your grandmother has not been well of late. She grows weaker with each passing day, and though she seldom complains, my heart tells me she is in need of care and comfort. I have baked this cake for her, and churned this butter fresh this morning. Put on your red cloak, fasten the hood about your face, and carry these to your grandmother. Ask after her health, and keep her company for a while. Perhaps the sight of your bright face will cheer her spirit." Little Red Riding Hood clapped her hands with delight, for she loved her grandmother dearly. "I shall go at once, mother," she replied. She tied the cloak's ribbons neatly beneath her chin, slipped the cake and the butter into a small basket, and promised that she would walk carefully and return before evening. Her mother, however, was not entirely at ease, for the path to grandmother's house was not a short one. It led out of the village across a meadow, and then wound its way beneath the ancient boughs of the forest, where tall trees shut out the sun, and the silence could weigh heavy upon the heart. Yet woodcutters were known to labor there during the day, and the girl, so thought her mother, would not be in danger. "Mind you, child," said her mother gravely, "keep to the path, do not linger too long, and above all, speak to no strangers. The forest can be treacherous, and not all who walk its paths do so with good intentions." "I shall remember," answered Little Red Riding Hood, though her mind, being that of a child, was already wandering to thoughts of flowers and butterflies. So she set out, her cloak bright as a flame against the green fields, her basket swinging in her hand. The morning air was sweet with the scent of dew, and larks sang in the hedgerows. She crossed the meadow and reached the shadow of the forest, where the trees grew so high that their crowns seemed to touch the clouds. The forest was vast and lonely, but Little Red Riding Hood was not afraid, for she could hear, now and again, the distant chop of axes and the crack of falling branches, which told her that the woodcutters were near at hand. She stepped lightly along the path, humming to herself. But she had not gone very far when a great grey wolf, lean from hunger and with eyes that gleamed like embers, stepped silently from behind a tree and stood in her way. Now wolves in truth are fierce creatures, and this one was fiercer than most, for he had roamed the forest many days without a meal, yet the sound of axes kept him cautious. He knew that men with sharp tools and strong arms could do him harm if he attacked the girl outright. So he smoothed the snarl from his muzzle, curled his tail politely, and spoke in a voice that was meant to sound gentle. "Good morning, little one," said the wolf. "And where might you be going, dressed so finely in your red cloak, with a basket on your arm?" Little Red Riding Hood, being innocent and unknowing, saw no danger in his question. She stopped and answered politely, as she had been taught. "I am going to my grandmother's house, to take her this cake and this pot of butter, and to ask how she is, for she has been ailing." The wolf pricked up his ears, his mind sharpening with cunning. "And where does your grandmother live?" he asked, his voice smooth as silk. "Not very far," replied the child. "If you go by the straight road, you need only pass the mill, and the first cottage you see on the right will be hers. But I am going by the forest path, Because I like to gather nuts, chase butterflies and pick flowers as I go." The wolf's yellow eyes gleamed. "Indeed." "How charming," he said. "I wish you good fortune, little one. Be sure to give your grandmother my respects, and tell her I hope she soon recovers." With a bow he trotted away, but no sooner had he turned his back than his face twisted into a cruel grin. "So," he thought, "the straight road shall take me quickly to this old woman's cottage. There I shall dine at leisure, and afterward I shall feast upon the tender child as well. What fortune has come my way?" And with that he ran swiftly down the straight path, his paws scarcely making a sound upon the leaves. Little Red Riding Hood, meanwhile, lingered as she had said she would. She strayed from the path to gather hazelnuts that rattled down from the trees. She chased bright-winged butterflies that danced among the ferns, and she filled her basket with wildflowers until it was nearly as full as it was with the cake and the butter. She sang to herself as she went, so that the birds answered her with song from the branches above. She thought of nothing but how pleased her grandmother would be to see such treasures brought to her bedside. In this way the child delayed her journey, and the wolf had ample time to reach the cottage first. Now the grandmother, who was very old and frail, lay in her bed, for her limbs ached and her breath came shallow. She had set the latch of her door with a string and bobbin, so that her granddaughter might enter easily, without her needing to rise. Rap, 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 came a knock at the door. "Who is there?" called the grandmother weakly. "It is I, Little Red Riding Hood," said the wolf, mimicking the girl's high, sweet voice as best he could. "I have come to bring you a cake and a pot of butter from mother, and to ask how you are." "Ah, my dear child," said the grandmother with a sigh of relief, "pull the bobbin, and the latch will go up." So the wolf pulled the bobbin, and the latch went up, and he slipped inside. In a trice he leapt upon the bed, and before the poor old woman could utter another word, he swallowed her whole. For he was ravenous, and the grandmother was but a small morsel to his hunger. When he had done, he drew the bedclothes up around him, tied the grandmother's nightcap upon his head, and settled himself among the pillows. He even turned his face toward the wall, to make his disguise more complete. By and by, Little Red Riding Hood came to the cottage door. Her hands were filled with flowers, her cheeks glowed from running, and her cloak trailed behind her. She knocked upon the door. "Rap, rap, rap! Who is there?" asked the wolf, softening his growl to sound as gentle as he could. "It is I, Little Red Riding Hood, with a cake and a pot of butter from mother, to ask how you are," answered the girl. "Pull the bobbin, and the latch will go up," said the wolf. So Little Red Riding Hood pulled the bobbin, and the latch went up, and she stepped inside. The room was dim, for the shutters were drawn against the light, and she could not see clearly. In the bed lay her grandmother, or so she thought, wrapped up in her cap and clothes. "Come closer, my dear," said the wolf softly. "Come and kiss me." The girl set down her basket, removed her cloak, and went to the bedside, yet something in the figure lying there gave her pause, for it seemed strange to her eyes. "Oh, grandmamma, grandmamma," she said, "what great arms you have." "All the better to hug you with, my dear," murmured the wolf. "But grandmamma, grandmamma, what long legs you have." "All the better to run with, my dear." "Oh, grandmamma, grandmamma, what large ears you have." "All the better to hear with, my dear." "But grandmamma, grandmamma, what great eyes you have." "All the better to see you with, my dear." "Oh, grandmamma, grandmamma, what great teeth you have," cried Little Red Riding Hood at last, her voice trembling. "All the better to eat you with, my dear," snarled the wolf, and with that he sprang from the bed, seized the child, and gobbled her up in an instant. And so the wolf's belly was full at last, for he had devoured both grandmother and granddaughter, and the little red cloak was seen no more.